been quite a day. It's been quite a couple of weeks. It's been quite a 37 years for me as a black man on this planet. So I want to correct something for the record. Senator Borrello mentioned that there wasn't discussion. We held hearings, and I think Senator Akshar spoke to that, and I think that Senator Gallivan spoke to that as well. Senator Flanagan reached out. Senator Lanza reached out. We have discussion about these things, and just because we don't agree on the subject matter doesn't mean that the conversations don't happen. Let's be very clear about that. When we talk about the vast majority of people, the vast majority of officers are inherently good, without a doubt. The vast majority of people are inherently good, but we still have a penal code, Mr. President. That is in the event that people commit bad acts against one another. I'll redirect to my original comments, and I want to thank Senator Akshar for a spirited debate and thoughtful conversation, despite differing on the subject matter of what we discussed today. I want to thank Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins for not just being a trailblazer, but being someone who listens. Allow me to be the chair of the Codes Committee. Your leadership in such a tumultuous time, Madam Leader, is greatly appreciated. My brother, Senator Myrie, was pepper sprayed on a Friday, and you called me on Saturday morning. The book of Matthew says, asking you shall receive, seeking you will find. That's verses 7 and 8. I asked, we received, and now we're going to find justice in the state. I want to thank Chantel Smith, because one day Chantel called me when I was on Gun Hill Road, and I'll never forget where I was. I was about to get a haircut when barbers were open. And she said that because Senator Squadron is leaving, you should be the ranking member on the Codes Committee. And I bristled for many reasons, one of them being that Senator Montgomery mentioned that in the last couple of years it was penalty enhancers day by day. And I don't subscribe to that theory of legislating, and it was tough, but Chantel said stick in there. Because if we get the majority, you could become the chair of the Codes Committee, and you'd be quite a good one. So I want to thank myself for listening to Chantel, and I want to thank Chantel for allowing for talking me into this. Senator Montgomery, we mentioned it earlier in session, Velmaneting. Every person, not just person of color, owes you a debt of gratitude for your fearlessness and leadership. To Nadia, Kenan, Chris, Dorothy, and Noel for your incredible work and preparation, I thank you. Thank you to Assemblymember Danny O'Donnell for championing this bill and allowing me to carry it in this House, and to my mentor, my brother, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie, for always standing up for what's right, staking your speakership to the reformation of a broken system, and to the caucus. Senator Jackson mentioned it bears worth repeating that we held a series of press conferences throughout the state last week to stand in solidarity and indicate that we just want the right change. There's a sense of frustration in the air that many of us have, especially of those of us who are people of color, specifically black people. George Floyd said he couldn't breathe. They didn't listen. This goes beyond Mr. Floyd. It goes to the devaluation of lives of black men that wears on us like the current does on the coast, day by day. That knee on Mr. Floyd's neck was a wake-up call for America. And while that murder didn't happen in New York, the actions of police in that case and many cases before that have led to a renewed call by the public for what many legislators like myself and many folks in the community have been saying for quite some time. We need policing reform. Now, it doesn't mean that we're anti-police. I just want to make sure we specifically delineate that and make that clear for the record. It just means that we needed to change a few things, but people weren't listening before, Mr. President. This is about transparency, not a desire to remove tools from officer for policing, which is an incredibly difficult job. It's frustrating to have to couch our language like that all the time. It should be understood that we understand and respect police, but every time and again, it seems like we have to say it. So I'll say it again. We respect the police, but we need to be respected by the police. I want to trust the police. I want my kids to trust the police. And Senator Janaris brought it up that, bad apple is spoiling a bunch, but I'll take you a step further than that. If I'm going to the supermarket and I see a bad apple time after time after time, forget about spoiling that bunch. I'm not buying apples anymore. That's the public trust argument. That's what we're getting to the heart of, Mr. President, so that people can trust those who police them. Dylan Roof gets Burger King, but George Floyd gets death? Armed protesters at the Capitol get nothing but Amadou Diallo with a wallet in his hand gets 41? Now, I remember in law school, we spoke about the case, the People versus Do, which spoke about the killing of young Latasha Harlings in Los Angeles for allegedly attempting to steal a bottle of orange juice. She was going to pay, Mr. President, but that didn't come out until the facts and until the video tape and the witnesses clearly said that this was a clear homicide, voluntary manslaughter, maximum prison sentence of 16 years. But the judge in that case, 400 hours of community service, 5 years of probation, and a $500 fine. No jail time. Now, I remember being in law school thinking about the holding or the main idea of this case, and they're talking about sentencing, and I'm sitting there like, hold on. You're talking about sentencing, and we're talking about the devaluation of black life in America. Now, Latasha Harlins was mentioned by Tupac Shakur in many songs, but I'll reference his song, I Wonder If Heaven's Got a Ghetto Here on Earth. Tell me what's a black life worth? A bottle of juice is no excuse. The truth hurts. It hurts when you feel devalued, Mr. President. It's felt like that for a long time with interactions between black people and the police. Now, every time I left the house when I was younger, no matter how jovial the conversation prior with my dad, he would turn and immediately serious when he said, be safe. Maybe because I wasn't a parent. Maybe because I just didn't understand what the world was like, but that be safe was more than just don't trip outside. It was a reminder that as a black man in America, you may be facing targets from multiple places. It's the talk that our fathers had with us as black men. Now, I don't think you can imagine the frustration, confusion that I had to feel as a parent, elected official, and as a black man when my daughter asked me, Dad, why is that police officer hurting that man? I thought police officers protected people. And I explained, police officers do. That was a bad incident. My daughter's only 5, so she doesn't know the series of bad incidents that have happened to us. Therein lies the frustration. Many of us have a feeling of that could be me. What you learn as a black man in America is that nothing insulates you from this. They say stay out of trouble. Go to law school. Be a state senator. Be polite. Mind your manners. Identify yourself. But that doesn't matter. That's the frustration. So I can tell you about being 12 years old and being asked, why were you loitering at a bus stop? What you think about that, loitering at a bus stop, Mr. President? When you come back from the orthodontist and you have your braces tightened and you're thrown in a police van because you fit the description. When you're pulled over or you're told that you're being pulled over for driving an expensive car when you're driving a 1984 GMC Jimmy. Or when weapons are drawn on you by an officer who identifies themselves after the fact, and you've never been arrested. We spoke about unsubstantiated and substantiated. We'll talk to you again about unreported. When things happen to you, Mr. President, and you don't feel enough faith and confidence in the system, you're not going to report them because you feel like it won't do a thing. Say thank God for video. Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and in both cases, again, it could have very easily been us. Your success doesn't matter. NBA guard Sterling Brown in Milwaukee. A gun pulled on him. He was tased and electrocuted. Thabo Sefolosha, another NBA player, hit with a baton, thrown on the floor, and eventually broke lower part of his leg and missed a part of the season, eventually settled with the NYPD. James Blake, world-famous tennis player, standing in front of his hotel, waiting to go to the U.S. Open. And he was tackled by an officer, despite cooperating. Now, Audre Lorde said, your silence won't protect you, and your success, it doesn't either. Now you understand why Colin Kaepernick took a knee. To silently protest injustice, and now when we protest silently, it seems to try to be used against us. So to Colin, I understand. I'm even wearing your sneakers today, Colin. There's beauty in the struggle, ugliness in the success. NFL apologized, and they said that Black Lives Matter, but let's make sure that they matter even more and get Brother Colin back on the field if that's what he wants. Now, as we lay Mr. George Floyd to rest today, we have to ask who stood up strong in the face of such adversity and never wavered. The reality is that George Floyd, yes, he said he couldn't breathe. But his last words, he called out for his mother. Now, for gravity's sake, I want you to realize that Mr. Floyd's mother had predeceased him. Mr. Floyd's mother was not alive at the time when he was fighting for his life. But even taking his last breath, he sought comfort from his mom. So to the mothers of the movement and their family members who pleaded with us as a legislature, press conferences, marches, calls, everything under the sun. If my daughters scrape their knees, I'm apoplectic. I run for the Neosporin. I could not imagine having my children killed and being that strong. So to Gwen Carr and Valerie Bell, Constance Malcolm, and more, I'm in debt to you for permitting me the opportunity to learn from you and learn your strength and resolve. To Constance Malcolm, a constituent of mine, that Saturday morning at Community Board 12 after your son was taken from us far too early, your strength and resolve was something that I studied back then and something I appreciate now. There are countless names that we read off, almost like a who's who of souls lost well before their time. Eric Garner, Sean Bell, Ramarley Graham, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, who was an EMT on the front lines fighting for us with COVID-19. Even she wasn't immune to this. Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Walter Scott, Alton Sterling, Terrence Crutcher, Michael Brown, Dan Roy Henry, Andrew Kearse, Freddie Gray, Amadou Diallo, Anthony Baez, Eleanor Bumpers, Delron Small, Oscar Grant, Laquan McDonald, Botham Jean, Tony McDade, and so many more. Now, the silver lining on this incredibly dark cloud is that the sun is finally starting to shine on injustice. It's starting to make people question what has been said for so long, and maybe it was the perfect storm of Amy Cooper plus quarantine plus George Floyd. Maybe it's the unmistakable, in my opinion, undisputable video evidence that we saw a live murder on TV, but it's done something to the consciousness of America. It's created more of a willingness to listen, to share, and to care. Emotional conversations have happened in living rooms, dining rooms, boardrooms, and Zooms throughout the country. That includes our conference. Many conversations fraught with raw emotion and pain. The pain of a wound that not only never healed, but it's a wound that you couldn't even seek treatment for, Mr. President. So to my colleagues, many of you who are standing in positions that may be uncomfortable, I appreciate your vote on this important, critical, and personal issue. I thank you for listening to me and other colleagues who impressed upon you the importance of this. More importantly, I thank you for your willingness to send a strong message that Black lives do matter. And to Senator Myrie, the courage that he's shown while wearing a shirt with his name on it to be pepper sprayed, while peacefully demonstrating, and to have the strength and resolve to not only continue to advocate, but advocate even stronger, I salute you. The reality is that right before he went to go protest, he sent me a text message and saying, looks like things might be going awry. I'm going to go out over there and see if I can help folks out. Help. There's a lot of gravity that comes with this position, Mr. President, and that all of us feel a heavy weight. But I don't know if there could be a more meaningful piece of legislation to me in this body, because it's way more than just policy. It is a time not only to correct what we thought and knew to be a flaw in the state law, but to correct misconceptions that many of us have carried for too long, for things that we can never experience. To the advocates who pushed and prodded for this day, protesters, and anyone that ever lifted a finger to text, tweet, or exercise your First Amendment rights, I thank you. Anyone who ever used their voice to uplift the downtrodden, to listen to someone who felt silence, I appreciate you. I encourage you not only to speak up today, but all the days thereafter, because the greatest thing about democracy is dissent. As I close, I'm not sure of a prouder moment, again, that I can have as a member of this body. George Floyd's being laid to rest today. And his daughter, Gianna, said that Daddy changed the world. Now, Gianna, you may not know me, but you're right. George Floyd changed the world. He changed the state. So, to George, happy Father's Day in heaven in a couple weeks, Brother Floyd. Thank you for stirring the soul and consciousness of America. Black lives matter. I vote aye, Mr. President.